So while we're going to go ahead and fly back, let's talk about officers a little bit. Officers. Officer. Deck officer. Come over here. So here's your 3 new officers. They gave everybody some free directives and 2 of each of the new officers. We'll go in and look at them directly. Carol Freeman. They're all epics, which is already ridiculous to begin with. The fact that all 3 of them are epics. I understand why they're epics. It has to do with sourcing and it has to do with keeping their abilities in check and making them cost more to level up. So people can't tier them up nearly as fast. Therefore, some of you have seen screenshots posted of like this ship doing like, oh, it's 200 million regular damage and then it's like a billion isolytic damage. These crazy screenshots because of all of these extra abilities. Well, those are guys who, A, their officer abilities were tiered up really high on the test server. So these guys were probably maxed tier 4 or tier 5 of these new epic officers. And B, they're hitting people who don't have any isolytic defense. And it's one of the things that Eco was talking about this morning, wherein, they're putting out the offensive officers first, creating the problem. He didn't say that part. I'm adding it in parentheses. They're creating the problem. So then in future months, when they release things, officers and, more artifacts and things like that that give isolytic defense, it will seem to players like there's actually a need to get this. If they put out the defense first, players would be like, why do I need that? Nobody's really doing all that much isolytic damage to me now. Anyway, I don't have to worry about it. And then the month later, when they put out all the offense, people are like, oh, crap, I wish I had gotten that thing. So they're putting the officers out first to show the damage potential, to create the threat that people will then pay more attention to solving the problem in future months of this arc when they put out more of the defense-based stuff. I was like, oh, so you Temple of Doom them, basically. You got them to drink the poison, so then you could sell them the antidote next month. Got it. And from a marketing standpoint, or just from a design standpoint, it does make sense, right? If you put the defense stuff out first, people weren't going to take it seriously. And then they'd be pissed next month when all the new offense officers came out and they're like, oh man, now how do I get this stuff again? I missed out on it. I didn't get it. And it'd be like, well, now you got to pay for it. And it's like, well, damn it, I don't want to pay for it. I could have gotten it for free last month. And it just leaves a very sour taste in people's mouth. So instead, you put out the new officers, you control their abilities or control the sourcing for them so people can't really tier them up much, realistically speaking. And then you can release more artifacts and officers and other things that will add more isolytic defense, and people will take it a little more seriously. Hey, James Bond, welcome on in. Why would you need more defense if you can just get more offense than their defense? Well, I don't know what the math looks like. Obviously, I don't know what the defense values are, and I haven't done or looked much at the charts and stuff like that to see what isolytic defense versus isolytic offense mitigation wise works out. I don't know the math on that. I haven't looked at it because there hasn't been a need to. Um, Janeway's doing 10%. The artifacts were doing 5%. It wasn't a huge deal, but it was worth investing lower deck slots or artifact slots into sourcing more isolytic defense stuff. Now there's more of a need for it, or at least it seems like that's the direction that it's trending in. So if we go look at our 3 new officers, Carol Freeman, this is the one you're going to get not for free. This is the one you're going to get guaranteed. All you got to do is spend $20 to buy the battle pass. The last milestone of the battle pass has 90 shards for her in it, and throughout the other parts of the battle pass along the way, you'll get the other 8 or 10 shards you need to finish her up. Captain's ability, she just boosts your shots when fighting other players, 100%. So, Rom does it when he's attacking bases, right? You boost your shots by like 100%. She does it when you're fighting other players. Just a straight up whole bunch more shots. Officer ability. If enemy player has any state, which they define down here, thankfully for doing that, morale, burning, hull breach, or assimilated. So Dezok and Gasa and those officers, they keep throwing at us in those events that we were like, why do we care about these guys? Our assimilated doesn't do much. Well, now assimilated might just be a thing that can trigger over here. If you can't do hull breach or burning or whatever the case may be, you can still maybe get assimilated on something. The other thing to keep in mind is morale. Well, you put morale on your own ship. So if you're on an explorer and you're giving yourself morale, you just know you could be helping out your opponent if they have Freeman. Isolytic cascade damage. This is just a multiplier, like hull breach is a multiplier to crit damage. Isolytic cascade is a multiplier to all your existing damage. This is how you're getting some of these crazy numbers, by boosting this ability, tearing her up a couple of notches. So your just overall damage output just goes through the roof. And then when you pair her up with these people, if you're on an explorer and you have morale, well, now he's boosting your cascade damage even more. Multiplies your total damage, including isolytic damage, and all research and other bonuses. So him tiered up, going up 75, 80, 100%. Her tiered up doing the same thing, boosting 85, 100%. And guess what? Andy Billups doing the same thing on a different ship type, though. So he and Ransom have the same ability, but for different ships. So we have a interceptor and an explorer bonus, as long as you have the appropriate state. So you can use that third slot if you need to be the person to give yourself the morale, give yourself the hull breach, or give your opponent the hull breach. Whatever the case may be, you can use your third bridge officer slot on that if because your below deck people from last month do not work in that. They only work on non-players. So if you're fighting other players in a PvP scenario, you need the third officer to be the one to trigger whatever the ability is. In this case, you would need to trigger morale, or for on an interceptor, you would need to trigger hull breach. Now, the other fun thing that they just told us about, even though it doesn't say it here anywhere, see right here, they are classified as Interceptor Strike Team, which is the same as Dukat. He's Interceptor Strike Team. So therefore, you can mix and match within that group and get synergy. These are not lower deck officers. He's Explorer Strike Team. Freeman is lower decks crew. So she gets synergy bonuses from your other lower deck officers and perhaps future officers this month. But Ransom and Billups are not part of that group. The other possible, I've heard lots of possible combinations with these guys, right? So obviously you're subbing in Ransom or Billups into your existing strike teams. Maybe you're replacing Akatika, who doesn't seem like he gets a lot of love here, because he's just boosting your weapon damage by 53%. That's not a whole lot. Why would I want to boost my weapon damage by 53% when I could get a 60% bonus to my isolytic cascade damage, which multiplies everything? So definitely getting a little bit of a boost. I guess maybe they're tired of hearing how much better Battleship Strike Team is than the other ones. So they're going to go ahead and throw everybody a bone here. The other thing is their lower deck ability does boost your isolytic defense. So these officers do have a little bit of a built-in counter. to help balance things out a little bit. So ransom you would use below deck on an interceptor. Billups you would use in an officer slot. Billups you would use below deck on a battleship. So the battleship is getting a little bit of defense. They're not getting any more of an offensive bonus yet, but they are getting a defensive bonus. The other officer that people were talking about that comes into mind is 7 of 9, because her below deck ability increases your isolytic cascade damage from a lower deck slot. Depending how you were able to tier her up, this could be even larger numbers. This could also be an opportunity if you're talking about using above deck officer slots, getting extra bonus shots. Carol Freeman here could fit into a number of different places. Could possibly combo up with these new Picard officers that we got previous months that weren't all that great. Well, you could use one of them to give you your bonus and put Freeman in a passenger, an officer slot, and then get your weapon damage bonus from one of these guys. Or you could just use the traditional Honor Guard Worf Lorca officer slots and put Freeman as the captain. So now you're getting additional bonus shots. You're getting Honor Guard Worf giving you criticals, so more criticals on those bonus shots. You're getting Hull Breach from Lorca, boosting the critical damage. And then you're applying Hull Breach to your opponent, which then gives you this isolytic cascade damage between her and 7 of 9 below deck. And the fight should be over in like 2 rounds. We'll see how it all works out. I'm sure PvP fights are not going to go nearly as long, but again, it comes down to officer sourcing and control. Again, Freeman coming out in the $20 battle pass, right? Got to give you that thing first. Got to spark the fire to make you chase the other ones for the isolytic defense, or any future events for the isolytic defense, right? Got to create the problem so then we can solve the problem. And all those other fun things. These guys, again, only available in those first weekend auction event, second weekend auction event, and we don't know what the third weekend auction event is going to be. Maybe it's a hybrid where you get both. Maybe you get different officers altogether. We'll have to wait and see on that one. Good evening. It's Lube and your 36 Raiders. Welcome on in, everybody. Howdy. Good evening. Welcome on in. Crossover leaderboards, probably. That's a possibility for sure. The crossover leaderboards do have the potential. In the past, we've seen them be more of a hybrid officers, so you might be able to get smaller quantities of both officers. We were talking about this at the beginning of the show. Likely just to round off, if you came up, 10 or 15 short in one of the earlier weekends, this might be an opportunity for you to top up, get over that hump in that final weekend. We'll have to wait and see. Hope everybody had a good stream hanging out with Lube while he was explaining how some of this new stuff works. We've been going through it ourselves. We just touched on the officers. We talked about our Space Dragons earlier and our new Texas class hostile ships. We have not gotten into the actual ship itself yet or any of the research. Those are the topics we're going to look at next. But thank you guys for coming on in. And good evening to you too. Hey, Falcon Paw. Doug, what's going on? Savage, Valiance, welcome on in, everybody. For those of you who don't know. Give a shout out to our dear friend over in the Squirrel House. Have I been working out? No, I haven't. Yeah, currently there is not a way to apply morale to your opponent. Maybe that'll be coming in a future officer. Or because so many of the other things need morale to trigger on explorers, you know, you need on your Enterprise, you need Kirk, whatever. You know, Weyoun triggers it for your Explorer Strike Team guys. They all need morale to do their abilities. So if you're using an Explorer and you're not giving yourself morale, chances are you're probably setting yourself back more. And it's also very likely that your opponent is going to bring something that's going to apply a state on you. They're not going to fly around with a Freeman crew, you know, geared up going, man, I really hope I find somebody who puts morale on their own ship because I have no other way to apply a debuff. That's just crazy talk, right? They'll throw, you know, even one of the guys, I think it's Dezok, below decks just to apply the assimilate, just in case. Like, they're not going to come completely unprepared. Uh, Picard gives morale to your own ship. He doesn't give it to your opponent. He applies morale to you for 3 rounds when you're fighting against player ships. He doesn't apply it to the player ship. Lube, thank you very much for renewing your subscription, by the way. Appreciate that. Bella with another hydrate, which I'll get to in a second if I didn't already. Dark Lord, thank you for the follow. Stewie also renewing his subscription for month number 4, starting a hype train. I appreciate that. I extended Stewie an offer today. He has politely declined for now, saying something about loyalty to Lube, yada yada, whatever. I'll keep working on him though. We'll see. We'll see what we can make happen. I did. I propositioned Stewie. I did. I made him an offer that I thought he couldn't refuse, and he refused it. So we shall see. Ace, thank you very much for the 100 bits. Continuing this hype train. I appreciate that. Yeah, Scopely fail English? That's impossible. Or unpossible. Yeah. Me flunk English? So. I was speaking English at the time, so that could have thrown Stewie off too. But, hey Zeta, I'm doing alright. Yeah, the wording is bad, Carissa. You're only applying morale to your own ship. You are not applying morale to your opponent's ship. It just only works when you're fighting against players, as instead of fighting against hostiles. So therefore, you can't use that Picard in a PvE scenario.